I think it's just the little things, like when my son kisses me on the cheek and he's like, "Oh, I love you, mommy." It shows that, or he says thank you after I do something for him. It just shows he appreciates my presence, and things I'm doing for him aren't going unseen. And
Yeah.
then conversely, there are times where I feel guilty, after picking him up from daycare and I'm on my phone checking email or responding to a client or something. It's like, oh, I should be spending this time with my son.
Welcome everyone to another episode of the Sis Please podcast. I'm Jaretta.
And I'm Satta.
How you doing, sis, today?
I'm good. I love your shirt.
Yes, I got this from Madarag. It's like a Aaliyah graphic tee. It's so cute. So I just wanted to pay homage to the princess of R&B.
And you said you have another one too, a Maya one?
Yes. So I think we mentioned this in an earlier episode, like whatever you used to watch, I would watch and listen to. So I remember, like back in the day when we had LimeWire and you would always listen to Maya songs.
Yeah,
and I
because
love Maya.
I'm like Aaliyah and Maya a little bit before your time. So how do you
Not
even?
really. Not really.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah, I
I was
guess
born in
not.
like 92. Like Aaliyah died when I was like 9. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Okay. I
go
guess.
ahead.
I guess 9-year-olds listen to Aaliyah and Maya. Um, but I haven't seen you all week. So what's good? What's new?
Not much. I mean, work is going all right. I work from home, so it was nice. Actually, this week I went to a school that I used to be a part of. I was never a teacher, but like doing nonprofit work. So it was good to just go back to that school and see the kids. And one thing I love about kids, they always tell you the truth. So I came in, one child was like, "Miss, I like your hair. Miss, I like your boots." Like they always tell you the truth. So it was just good.
For better or for worse?
Yeah, interacting with them. And then also too, like it just made me realize, like, even though I miss interacting with kids and teachers and stakeholders, I like this area that I'm in right now where I'm behind the scenes. So how was your day, or week rather?
Well, it was good. I mean, your nephew had his very first dentist appointment ever.
Ooh.
Apparently, I'm late because he was supposed to go when he was 1, but he's 4 now. So I guess I'm really late. But also, too, I wasn't going to take him to the dentist during the pandemic and have some doctor play in his mouth and breathe on him. So
That's real.
I, I think it's fine. It worked out. It was an awesome appointment. I was like, they have an adult practice too, and I'm actually going to end up going there for my first appointment in a few months. But I was like, this is the best doctor's appointment I have ever gone to. It was so much fun. He enjoyed it. It was so educational. Basically, he can't eat gummies anymore, so no Welch's fruit snacks
I love me
anymore.
my
So he's
Welch's. So
devastated. So maybe I'll just give you our stash that we have because he can't have that as frequently because it gets stuck in your teeth. And for adults too, you need to know this. It gets stuck in your teeth, and then the dental hygienist said you should probably brush your teeth within 30 minutes after eating them, or else like they're just stuck there and it can cause cavities. But he really enjoyed the appointment. It was really good. But it just occurred to me, and he also had a doctor's appointment last week. So it just occurs
yeah.
to me, so much of what we do as parents and as mothers is like being a chauffeur for our kids. That's basically what being a parent is. You're also a chauffeur. Like I shuttle him to and from places, just drive him around all the time. So, and it's probably only going to get worse as he gets older because we're thinking of putting him in karate and swimming.
That's so exciting.
Yeah, so like I think all kids need to know how to swim, especially in our community. When we were growing up, my mom was afraid for us to go to the beach and like, oh,
Yeah.
stay out of the
No
water,
water.
stay out of the
I love
water.
the water.
But yeah, so and he took swimming lessons when he was 10 months.
Yeah.
But then obviously he didn't retain it because we didn't keep doing it. And apparently, once you take them to swimming lessons, you have to keep it up. So we're gonna try probably when the weather clears up, to start taking him to swimming. And
Okay.
so it should be fun. But it's like I was thinking, like I said, being a parent, you're basically a chauffeur for your kids. And I feel like my son is like the most demanding boss I've ever had. Like so much of what our world revolves around him. And I'm sure you've experienced this too when you've babysat him, that he can be pretty bossy at times.
Yes, Mr. Opinionated, but I love it. It's great just seeing the world through his eyes, and like this is my first nephew, so I love him so much. Would take a bullet for him. But yes, he is very Mr. Opinionated. I remember a couple of months ago when I babysitted him. It was me and my mom, and um, mom had to go downstairs or actually run an errand. So she was just like, "Oh, take him." And I was doing my natural hair at the
Mhm.
moment, and he was just like, "Auntie, let's go downstairs." I said, "Auntie's doing her hair right now. When grandma gets back or when I'm done, we can do that." So 10 minutes passed by. "Auntie, I'm ready to go downstairs." I was just like, "Well, I'm not. Like, I'm, gentle, what they say, gentle parenting. Like, this is gentle auntying, if that's even a word."
Okay.
So I was just like, "Not right now. I'm still doing my hair." So he like goes across on the side of my room and starts like whining and starts crying. So, for those who are in education or who want to know gentle parenting tips, what I did is I went down to his level and I was like, "Hey, what's wrong?" And he told me what's wrong. And I said, "Auntie didn't mean to hurt your feelings, but I was doing my hair and I never said we couldn't go. I'm just saying not right now. Like, let's practice patience. Can you say that?" He's like, "I don't want to be patient." And I was just like,
Sounds
well,
about right.
yeah. So no, it was
Sounds
just
about
great
right.
seeing his world through his eyes. And I think it just also reminds me too, like, I'm glad that he had the space to verbalize his emotions, because I think oftentimes, and I've said this before, boys are often socialized to suppress their feelings. So I was happy that he was able to verbalize that, one, and two, create a safe space for him to kind of explain, like, "Hey, not right now." Speaking about mothers, I always commend mothers for their endless sacrifice. Just a couple of weeks ago, me and my friend from my alma mater from undergrad, she lives around here, and I was just like, "Well, how do you balance, or I don't even know balance the right word, like juggling being a
Hmm.
full-time mom as well as being a medical doctor?"
Mm.
So I'm gonna like pose this question to you. Like, how do you balance being a full-time mom, full-time wife, and having a full-time business?
Well, there is no balance. I think that's the first thing. That's the operative word you need to take out. There is no balance. Like some days it's just you just holding on by a thread. Like I remember reading this quote somewhere that said, "Some days I take motherhood, and some days motherhood takes me." And
Mm,
depending on what day you catch me, I'm took. I'm completely spent. You know.
yeah,
So it's just, I think the truth about motherhood is that we're all figuring out. I learn something new about being a mother every day. I learn something new about my child every day. And when they're this young, they evolve so quickly. They change so quickly. Their likes and dislikes change like every single day. It's like riding a roller coaster. So you just have to hold on for dear life and try to do your best. So I
that
mean, there
seems.
is no perfect formula for parenting. Everybody does it differently.
No, I totally agree, even though I'm not a parent. So, like, kind of going back to you and that quote, like, some days motherhood, you take motherhood by the horns, and sometimes it's taking you.
Yeah.
When can you, like, recall a time where you felt like, "Man, I'm killing this joint"?
Hmm. That's a really good question. I don't know. It's just, like I think it's just the little things like when my son kisses me on the cheek and he's like, "Oh, I love you, mommy." It shows that, or he says thank you after I do something for him. It just shows he appreciates my presence and the things I'm doing for him aren't going unseen. And
Yeah.
then conversely, there are times where I feel guilty, after picking him up from daycare and I'm on my phone checking email or responding to a client or something. It's like, oh, I should be spending this time with my son. And I try really hard, like when I'm done, like to go pick him up, that's like the end of my workday. And I shouldn't be checking emails. Sometimes it's hard to do, but
Yeah.
don't check email, don't go on the computer because then it mentally takes you away from being present. It makes it hard to be present. So I try to set those boundaries for myself. And some days I'm successful at it and some days I'm not. But I think too, what's really so hard about being a mother today is that compared to our parents and grandparents' generation, it just feels like women have to do it all with not as much support. Like
Mm,
think about like when we were growing up, we grew up in a house with our grandparents and sometimes our aunts and uncles because our mom brought like literally dozens of her family members from Liberia and
mm.
her house was the stopping ground for all of them, like the pit stop for all of them. So they lived, some for years, some for months. It just depended, but we always had that extended family around us, and that really helped my mom because she worked a lot. But nowadays you don't have that because everybody's still working. Our mom still works even though she's been saying for years she's going to retire. Now she's
Mm.
so slowly, she's gradually moving toward that,
Cutting
but we'll
down her
see.
hours, talking about,
Yeah.
oh, I got 20 hours of work. It's like you still do double time, like overtime
Yeah,
though.
like,
But
and she doesn't need to work, but I understand. I think it's just ingrained within her, like that African work ethic. And two, she's like, she'll be bored if she doesn't do something. So I
yeah,
get that. But and you guys help us out when you can, and I don't want to ever take that for granted. And I realize that's such a privilege to have family nearby because we've moved all over the place and now we live 30 minutes away. So it's really
yeah,
helpful, especially when you have kids, to have that family support. Like, it would be nice for women to have more support in mothering.
yeah,
And it's because we do multiple jobs, like I said, inside the home, outside the home, whether you're a stay at home mother. To me, all women work. It's just a matter of whether you work inside the home full time or you work outside the house full time, or you do both.
yeah. It's always
So,
a dance and a juggle. In fact, I
yeah.
was actually watching this not Netflix documentary called In Our Mother's Gardens, and it just
Hmm.
chronicles like just different women all within the diaspora and just kind of talking about their relationships with their mothers and their grandmothers. And then there was this lady, I think her name is Teresa Thames, and she said this quote that was so like profound, and it just kind of reminds me, even though I'm not a mother, just
Hmm.
about Black women and our experiences. And she like says this quote: Black women's worth is seen in our bodies, and we're not applauded until we produce something for someone else. We're not celebrated or validated until we do something for someone else. And I think that kind of just reminds me of our mom, right? Like having so many siblings and having people in the house, and just even balancing not only that, but just also being a single mom, a mom that was raising a son with severe autism. Like that is a lot, and I commend my
Yeah.
hat. So kind of like going back to this many like roles that you play as a mother, as someone who has their own business and
A
is a
wife.
full-time
Yeah.
mom and wife. Like, can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that unpaid labor that
Yeah.
you
There's a
have?
lot of invisible, unpaid work that women do. In preparing for this episode, we came across some research that says women do like 32 hours a week of childcare and housework compared to 18 hours a week for men. That's
Whew.
almost double what a man does. And by the way, this is between women who stay at home or work. It doesn't matter. Even if you have a full-time job outside the home, you're still doing a lot of the childcare and housework. And there's also
Yeah,
this thing, that people have talked about called the mental load. There's a lot of organizing, planning, thinking, and
yeah,
stuff that as a mother you have to do constantly, whether it's like meal planning, oh, what are we going to eat for dinner this week, or scheduling doctor's appointments, or camp signups. We need to do that like 4 months in advance. Like, and usually I feel like it's the mother that's really thinking about those
ahead.
things. But I'm like fortunate in the sense, some of my friends joke with me that our marriage is very egalitarian, in the sense that I feel like I'm a progressive woman in that sense. Like, what I do, my husband better be doing too. So
Damn
like
right.
I cook, I cook, he cooks, I clean, he cleans, he shuttles our son to places, and so do I. And I don't think I would marry someone who had these very traditional views of women, like barefoot and pregnant, cook me my dinner, that kind of
Nah, for
thing.
real. And shout out to my brother-in-law. He knows who he is. And no, I think that's why I respect your marriage so much. And like luckily he had a foundation where he saw his parents like loving on each other and like carrying that load. So I totally agree. Having a supportive spouse or partner definitely takes a lot of the burden on the child rearing, on
Mhm.
just instead of just having it one person. Because again, I look at our mom and I'm like, how the heck did she do this all and
Yeah.
without a supportive partner? So kudos to my brother-in-law and any men listening to this who take care of their kids, doing what they have to do and sharing the load, because it's not easy.
Yeah, because I'm not fitting to be anyone's mother except for the child I birthed. So
For
if
real.
we're in the house together, I feel like we both should play an equal role in keeping the household up and running. Now, that doesn't mean every single task I do, you have to do. Like, not all men can cook, not all women can cook, but like, there has to be some kind of division of labor that feels equal. And sometimes it's not equal all the time. Sometimes, like, I'm working a lot, my husband is working a lot, and the other person picks up the slack. But it reminds me of this quote that Sheryl Sandberg had in Lean In. I don't know if you've ever read her book, but she said to women, like, the most important decision you'll ever make in your career is who you'll marry. And I
Mm.
1000% agree with that, because if you don't have a partner who's willing to share in the child rearing or household
Mess up
responsibilities,
your
it can
life.
be, yeah, it makes it that much more difficult to be a mother. But I think also too, something I rely on along with having a supportive partner is outsourcing. I'm not afraid
Mm.
to say it. Like, we've had a nanny in the past when our son was first born, before he started going to daycare. What else we outsource? Lawn care, um, grocery shopping, outsource that. So I think finding ways, if you can, obviously there's a cost to this, if you can afford it, to take the load off your plate is really important. And I look at outsourcing as sort of replacing that extended family network that we used to have back in the day. Like I
Yeah.
said, how our grandparents were in the house with us. Like, our grandmother used to cook all the time. Like, when
Yeah.
our mom was at work and stuff, she used to clean, that sort of. So our grandfather was there. He had,
He
his
was doing what he
traditional
was
views. So,
doing.
but he was there. Like, if, my mom had to run an errand, we can sit there with him and watch TV, and grandpa would make sure we didn't, put our finger in the electrical socket. Someone was always there.
Yeah.
And we don't have that now to the same degree. So it makes it that much harder. So I'm curious, for the women and mothers listening, I'm curious to hear what you outsource, what you find valuable to unload in your own day-to-day life, because I'm always looking for ways to be more efficient and to optimize my time better.
Yeah, no, there's nothing wrong with outsourcing. And like you said, you're doing what's best for you. I think a question,
Hmm.
as we were kind of just talking about our family and how it was traditional in a lot of ways, I'm just curious, like, what did you hear from mom or the aunties, the African aunties, just in terms of like you raising your child? Because they always got something to say.
Yeah, I mean, they have something to say, but sometimes it's in one ear, out the other. Not saying, I mean, the stuff they says is valuable, but like with anyone, you can take it or leave it. Everybody's experience of parenting is different, and everybody parents in a different environment. The environment that our mother raised us in or parented us in 30 plus years ago is different than the one I'm parenting in now with a 4-year-old son, or will. I can't imagine when he's like a teenager in high school what technology and social media is going to be like. Lord, like,
Yeah,
can you even imagine?
I can't even
Um,
imagine.
and all the studies now that talk about like Instagram. I don't have a girl. Maybe one day I'll be lucky enough to have a daughter, but like, talk about Instagram and body image and how that's forcing girls to have a warped body image now. Like, I can't imagine having a daughter and like 15 years from now, there's some other social media platform that's skewing their image of themselves or putting out images that affect my son. So
Yeah,
I think it's just different, but I value other people's advice, especially that of my elders, but they don't know everything.
yeah,
They,
and they
because
shouldn't.
they've never parented my specific child. You know what I'm saying?
And I like what you say about that too, because again, even though our mom did the best that she could have, but I think growing up in a third world country where, I feel like a lot of our immigrant parents, all they had to do was survive. So you have
Yeah.
these kids, you got to work. She parented us pretty much the same. It was just kind of like, this is what it is, and this is
Mhm.
what you're going to follow. And not saying that she didn't try her best, but I think given that we're Liberian American, we were born
Mhm.
here, we picked up skills, we kind of picked up what we liked, what we didn't like. You were able to parent your son in a way that maybe mommy hasn't or didn't have the privilege of doing because she was on survival mode.
Mhm.
So given what we just kind of talked about, do you feel like motherhood lives up to the dream or to the hype?
I feel like the reality of motherhood is a lot different than the dream or the image that is put out there. Like, this woman with two perfectly coiffed kids and she's perfectly put together and her house is clean. I don't know anybody like that. And honestly, for me, I never dreamed about becoming a mother. I know some
Really?
women really, really, no, I know some women really, really do. Like, I wanted to be a mother, but it wasn't the ultimate end goal for me, and it wasn't the thing that I thought would define me as a woman if I did or didn't do it.
Mm.
But I mean, the reality of motherhood is that it's really hard. There's no blueprint for this. There's no manual. No one hands you a book and says, this is how you do it.
Yeah.
And, I make mistakes every day, and I'm sure I'll continue to make mistakes. So, but it makes me have more empathy for our mom. I'm a
Yeah.
better understanding of her, now that I'm a mother, because you don't know until you're in it. But I
Yeah.
think my vantage point as a Black mother only adds to the complexity of motherhood. Like,
For
granted,
sure.
motherhood is hard regardless what race you are, but being a Black mother in America is it's a unique experience, and it
Mm.
comes with its own unique challenges, especially being a Black mother to a Black son. Like, I want to protect his innocence and his Black boy joy for as long as possible, as humanly possible. And that's hard to do. And it's not just about how, like, the police may view him, it's from, protecting him to whatever degree I can from, like, those everyday slights that Black boys and Black men seem to experience in America more so than other people.
Yeah, no, most definitely. That's so real when it comes to Black motherhood, just in terms of the many hurdles that y'all face in terms of racial discrimination. Sometimes, if you don't have basic health care, just systemic racism in general. And y'all know, or actually, my sister knows, I'm in the education field. So
Mhm.
when you talk a little bit about like Black boys and the need to protect their Black boy joy and their innocence, that is so real. Like in education, oftentimes Black children, especially Black boys, are deemed less innocent than their white peers, and like we use that term called adultification. The U.S. Department of Education, I think they did a study in 2016 how Black children account for 19% of preschool, but yet those students, like Black children, result in 47% of out of school suspension. So, I mean, that is such a traumatic thing that our Black children are facing on like a day to day basis. And I think just from an education lens, given that the teaching force is majority white women, I think it's really important, especially given that we're in this new world. Um, and when I say new world, I mean like a world that's more diverse. Is just making
Mhm.
sure that we have teachers, paraprofessionals, just everybody being culturally competent. And what I mean by that is just having the ability to celebrate, understand, and teach students of like diverse cultures, right? And I think that also just helps students feel more celebrated by their teachers. And then also teachers having the ability to adapt to those certain diverse cultures and needs. So that was just my
Yeah.
little education skills, but it's just so important because so often Black children or just children of marginalized identities have their innocence taken away at a young age. So I totally agree with your perspective to wanting to keep that innocence as much as possible.
Yeah, and I think it's similar to what we were talking about in the Beyonce episode, like the whole angry Black woman archetype and not being able to showcase the full breadth and depth of our humanity. And I think with Black boys starts particularly early. Like, I feel
Yeah.
like sometimes Black children aren't given the same grace other kids of different ethnicities are when they display a certain range of emotion. It's like it's threatening to people.
Yeah.
Or it can feel dangerous to people in some way, and that's just something, I really want to try to protect our son from as much as possible. I know you really can't, but just
Yeah.
to have talk to him about it, maybe better prepare him for those things, and to also understand how we'll respond when those things happen, to have the tools to effectively respond in those incidents and make sure he's given as fair a shake as possible.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know he's young, but have you kind of experienced, like in his 4 years of life, any everyday everyday slights where you're like,
Um, there was one thing. I went to a mommy and me class one time, me and my husband, and I was like in the other room because you have to take off your shoes when you go like sit on the mat with your kid or whatever. He was like maybe 9 months old, and I was in the other room putting on my shoes, and my husband had already gotten, his shoes on, and he was holding our son, and one of the grandmothers who had brought her like granddaughter to the circle time or whatever, she was like, "Oh, he's so cute. I love his afro." And she just put her fingers in his head and touched it. And she didn't mean any harm by it, but it's like, just,
Again, he's not a chia pet.
You
Like,
know,
leave him alone. Like,
you don't do that. But like I've had friends, close friends who their sons, they're toddlers, and they're like, "Oh, he's so big, he should be a football player one day." And there's that adultification that you're talking about. Like, just let the child be a child.
and again, not all black boys are meant to play sports. Like,
Exactly.
again, like, what if he ever wanted to like play chess or do something that's not where he's
It's
entertaining
not
the
about using his
masses?
physicality or his body. Yeah.
Yeah, but again, I think it just goes back to like the black body and how often, you know, it's either
It's not
dehumanized.
valued until it's in service of something or someone else.
Exactly, exactly. Just like that woman said in that documentary.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But all that said, Jaretta, I really hope what I'm saying is not making you scared or putting you off even more from being a mother, because you've had conversations with me and our mom saying, "Oh, I don't know if I want to have kids. I'm fine with being childless by choice." So, like, how do you feel about that and the possibility of being a mother?
I think about this often. I mean, being 30, I'm still young, but I'm not getting any younger. But I hear
Hmm.
a lot of this child free movement. And it's interesting how the convictions that I had at 17, I still have. I think I'm
Hmm.
similar to you, where it's just like children, take them or leave them. I think I love my nephew to death.
Hmm.
I'm so glad that I will have a staple in the way that he is raised. And I would love if I never had children. I think it would be a blessing for him to be like, well, Auntie like went to my swimming lessons or my karate lessons,
Hmm.
or I
Uh-huh.
remember every time when we went to go trick or treating at the house. Like, I'm fine with
Hmm.
that. I think having kids is a hefty responsibility.
Hefty.
And like you said, you got to have the right freaking partner to do it. Or, I understand certain situations happen. But I know for me, as someone who wants to be in a loving, committed relationship, I wouldn't consider it if I wasn't in a marriage. And not just married to anybody, too, because listen, I mean, like having a emotionally supportive partner that, like you
Hmm.
said earlier, with you and your husband, where it's not like, oh, well, because you're a woman. Because that's also, I feel like some people think about that as well. Because you're a woman and because you're socialized to be caring and nurturing, that you just be in the house cooking, cleaning, barefoot, and my husband is pursuing their dreams. No, we're a family unit. Um, I feel like God has also gifted me with abilities and talents. I'm not saying that children would take away from that, but I would really need a supportive partner in order to do that. This morning, I was watching a TikTok, and I think she was like a medical doctor, and she was just like, for those who want to freeze their eggs, take a MH test, or I don't
What
know.
is that?
Basically, they test your egg reserve, like how many potential eggs that you have left. So I think the next time that I have a physical, I will, check that out. But
Would
I,
you consider freezing your eggs?
I keep hearing that it's expensive, but I also, this same doctor was just like, it is expensive. However, like most primary care doctors or OBGYNs do payment plans. Again,
Hmm.
take it or leave it. Like, I'm
Yeah,
not,
well, it's funny. I think that freezing
yeah.
the eggs could give you some measure of certainty, but also I think, when I went to my OBGYN, she told me, I was like, "Oh yeah, at the time I think I was 37, yeah. I know that's advanced maternal age, to try to have a second child and stuff." She was like, "Honestly, we don't start to get really concerned about some of those potentially negative outcomes or the ability to get pregnant until like 43 now." So advanced maternal age, I think, has been extended now from
Wow.
35, because I think that was the medical standard for like decades and decades. And I think that's being revisited now. But that said, I'm not trying to have no kid at 43. And that's no offense to any women who are trying and want to build their family. I just want to be done by then. Like,
Yeah, no,
I
it
just want
makes
to be,
sense because you don't
yeah.
want to be, again, no shade to those who've done it. Like, what? How old was Mariah Carey and Janet when they had their kids? They were
I mean, I know Jana was like 50. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be 50 and pregnant. Like, being in your 30s and pregnant is laborious enough. I can't imagine being like certified middle age and carrying a baby to full term. That's like
Yeah.
she deserves an Olympic gold medal for that because that pregnancy is so physical, it's emotionally taxing, but obviously it's very, very physically taxing. So any
Yeah.
woman who's like in her mid to late 40s or like Janet in her 50s and having kids, like kudos to them. God bless you.
I see a lot of stuff on social media. Like there was this one woman that I follow, Vicky Logan, again, TikTok. She was just like, here's my pregnancy ick. She's been married for 9 years, but just, I think she was infertile for a long time, but just is starting to have her baby. And she was like 8 months pregnant. She's like, I'm going to tell you about my pregnancy icks. She was
Mhm.
like, it's just hard to get up and breathe. And I remember
Yeah.
me clowning you. I'm sorry, sis. Where, when my nephew was, baking in the oven, I'm like, dang, why is she so out of breath?
Okay. Oh, we gonna see when it's your turn. We gonna see. You'll
Like you
know.
out of
You'll
breath.
know.
She was just like, I smell like a teenage boy. But she was
I
like,
didn't have that problem.
yeah,
I didn't
she was
have
just
that
like, I
problem.
have some good things too. She was like, I feel like, she's like, I think with the hormones and stuff, she's like, I'm mean to my husband, but my husband still loves me. And she was like, I love that for me. And she was just like, don't be having babies with people that don't like you. Like, and I'm like, that
Yeah,
is
I mean, and
true
that should even go without
without
saying.
saying.
But in today's day and age, I guess you have to say it.
No, but I mean, again, I just think about going back to I think just having a strong, supportive family unit is so important to me. And I know you call me an SJW, sis, but I was thinking about this the other day.
So for
You
those
know,
who don't know, social justice warrior. That's what SJW stands for. But anyway, go
yes,
ahead.
but I think having a black family is a form of resistance,
Yeah.
because
Hmm.
all our lives, for centuries on end, we've been told that we don't deserve to be here, that our lives don't matter. So I think having a supportive, lovely family unit where people are, what is the best for our family and the child? Because I
Yeah.
feel like, again, from an education perspective, or just in life, you want to raise children in a healthy, productive, loving environment. And, like
Hmm.
you said, you're not always going to get it right, but at least you have the tools, or you're seeking the tools to to get it right. Because at the end of the day, like my nephew is not going to be 4 forever. He will be,
Yeah.
a healthy, functioning adult. And you want to make sure that he's raised as a good human. But I think you and my brother-in-law are doing an excellent job, and it's just great to see him grow.
Well, I appreciate it. That means a lot. And I hope, I know you said you want to be partnered before you
Yeah.
have a child, but I hope either way you stay open to the idea of motherhood because it is like a magical experience, as difficult as it can be.
Yeah.
So, it would be nice one day to have like a little Jaretta or even a little Jarrett running around, you
Oh
know,
God, I
you
would
know.
never name my child Jared. I mean, but no, I think also that's interesting too. I see the benefits of having children in terms of like building a
Mhm.
legacy, seeing them grow. Children are different from us, but they do have some of the
Mhm.
things that we developed in them. So I would love to see that one day and build a legacy. But I know me personally, I would need that emotional support.